An excavator stands alone at dusk, its arm frozen midair, as if unsure whether to continue. We celebrate machines like this. We film them. We measure their power. Yet no one stays when the digging ends. No one lingers in the silence that follows. Steel tears through earth, reshapes landscapes, rewrites maps. But something else shifts too, something quieter. A village road disappears. A hill flattens. A river bends. We call it development. The machine does not argue. It obeys. And still, when the engine cools, the ground does not look the same. The question is, neither do we. The first machines that clawed into soil were smaller, slower. Steam breathed through iron lungs. Men stood beside them, uncertain whether to trust them. Progress once looked fragile. It rattled. It leaked. It failed. But it also promised speed, speed beyond muscle, beyond patience. And that promise changed something fundamental. Earth stopped being sacred terrain. It became material, resource, asset. The shift was subtle at first. A canal dug deeper. A railway cut straighter. Each success felt justified. Each scar looked temporary. No one imagined how permanent the mindset would become. At first, excavators were invited into cities like honored guests. They arrived with noise, yes, but also with hope. Streets widened. Foundations deepened. Entire neighborhoods rose from dust. Children watched from windows as metal arms moved like mechanical animals. There was pride in that motion, a belief that the future could be shaped by force. And for a while, it worked. Markets expanded. Travel shortened. Wealth concentrated. But something subtle began to shift beneath the celebration. The ground was no longer shared ground. It was controlled ground. And control, once tasted, rarely retreats quietly. Digging is never just physical. It redraws invisible lines. When soil is moved, ownership moves with it. Land once walked freely becomes measured, divided, fenced. An excavator does not ask who stood there before. It does not remember footsteps. It follows coordinates. And coordinates carry power. Investors see opportunity where farmers once saw seasons. Blueprints replace memory. The transformation feels efficient, almost elegant. Yet something fragile begins to erode, not in the landscape, but in perception. The earth shifts from being lived upon to being managed. And that distinction changes how decisions are made. We often speak about what machines destroy. Forests reduced, hills leveled, rivers redirected. The damage is visible, undeniable. But what if the deeper impact is not subtraction, but acceleration? Excavators do not merely remove. They compress time. A valley that took centuries to form can vanish in weeks. A decision once debated for generations is executed in a season. The machine shortens hesitation. And when hesitation shrinks, reflection shrinks with it. Perhaps the most profound mark left behind is not a hole in the ground, but a culture that forgets how to wait. Speed brings profit. Profit brings expansion. Expansion demands more ground. The cycle appears logical, almost natural. But there is a quiet distortion inside it. When digging becomes routine, resistance feels irrational. Slowing down seems inefficient. Questioning feels naive. The excavator does not create this mindset alone. It amplifies it. Investors celebrate output. Cities celebrate growth. Governments celebrate scale. No one celebrates restraint. And so the machine keeps moving, not because it must, but because stopping begins to look like failure. Yet here is the contradiction. Some of the most prosperous regions on Earth were shaped by excavation. Ports carved into coastlines. Tunnels piercing mountains. Foundations anchored deep into stone. Entire economies rose because someone decided to dig. So the machine is not villain nor hero. It is amplifier. It magnifies intention. If the goal is extraction, it extracts. If the goal is connection, it connects. The real question was never about steel and hydraulics. It was about vision. And vision is far less stable than metal. An excavator rarely works alone. Behind its movement stands a network. Financiers, planners, engineers, insurers. Steel touches soil, but decisions are made in quiet rooms far from dust. The machine becomes the visible tip of an invisible architecture. Contracts signed months earlier determine where the bucket falls. Risk models predict how deep it should go. By the time the engine starts, the outcome is already shaped. The earth moves last. This is the system few people see. The machine feels powerful, yet it is often the final gesture in a much larger design. Every excavation begins with a promise. Jobs, growth, renewal. The language is familiar, almost comforting. And sometimes the promise holds. Neighborhoods revive. Infrastructure strengthens. Opportunity widens. But promises are forward-looking by design. They rarely dwell on what disappears. A small workshop closed. An old orchard removed. A view that once framed childhood memories replaced by concrete. Progress counts gains precisely. Losses are harder to quantify. They dissolve into statistics. The excavator leaves efficiency behind, and a quiet subtraction no spreadsheet fully captures. There is also sediment beneath the soil, layers of memory. Archaeologists know this well. Dig too fast, and history fractures. An excavator can expose ancient foundations in seconds. A shard of pottery, a buried wall, a forgotten road. The irony is sharp. Machines built for the future often uncover the past. For a moment, time folds. The operator pauses. The site grows quiet. What was meant to be cleared becomes protected. Not every layer is disposable. Some layers insist on being remembered, and that interruption reveals something profound about depth. Depth is power. Whoever controls how deep we dig controls what we uncover and what we erase. Mining companies understand this instinctively. Urban developers do too. Subsurface rights, mineral claims, underground corridors. Beneath the visible city lies another territory of value. The excavator becomes a key, unlocking hidden layers of wealth. But unlocking also means intrusion. The deeper we go, the more fragile systems we disturb. Aquifers, roots, pressure balances. What seems solid at the surface may depend on invisible stability below. Over time, the sound of excavation becomes ordinary. The mechanical rhythm blends into daily life. Cities learn to sleep through it. Markets adapt around it. What once felt disruptive becomes background noise. This normalization is subtle, almost gentle. But normalization shapes expectation. If land is always under revision, permanence feels outdated. If ground is always provisional, roots feel temporary. The excavator leaves more than altered terrain. It leaves a culture comfortable with constant reshaping, even of things once considered stable. Yet systems rarely reveal their full cost immediately. Soil compacts. Water redirects slowly. Microfractures widen over years. The excavator's mark can linger beneath the visible change. A foundation shifts slightly. A road sinks millimeters. A neighborhood floods unexpectedly after heavy rain. These are not dramatic collapses, just quiet consequences accumulating. The machine may have left months ago. The contract closed. The ribbon cut. But the landscape continues negotiating with what was altered. And landscapes have long memories. Still, we return to the machine. We admire its precision, its reach, its strength. There is something hypnotic about controlled force. Watching an excavator operate feels like witnessing authority in motion. It obeys commands instantly. It reshapes resistance without hesitation. In a world of uncertainty, that clarity is seductive. Press a lever, the earth responds. No debate, no delay. Perhaps that is why the image persists. Not because of destruction or progress alone, but because it offers a rare illusion. That complexity can be simplified by pressure. One winter, the excavator stopped. Not by choice. Funding froze. Permits stalled. Markets trembled. Half-dug foundations filled with rainwater and ice. Steel arms stood idle against a pale sky. For the first time, absence became visible. No engine noise. No dust rising. Just unfinished earth waiting. And something unexpected surfaced. The ground did not demand continuation. It did not collapse without intervention. It simply rested. The urgency that once felt inevitable now seemed constructed. Perhaps the rhythm had never belonged to the land at all. Without motion, perspective shifts. Residents began to walk through the abandoned site. Children climbed the soil mounds. Weeds pushed through untouched ground. What had been a project became a landscape again. It was not beautiful in a polished way, but it was alive. The pause exposed something uncomfortable. Perhaps not every interruption is failure. Perhaps some unfinished spaces allow a different kind of imagination. The excavator had revealed absence before. Now its silence revealed possibility. Investors called it stagnation. Officials called it delay. Newspapers called it uncertainty. But on the ground, the language felt different. People spoke about breathing room, about reconsideration, about scale. The absence of excavation created space for questions that noise once drowned out. Did the city need to grow outward? Did every empty lot require development? Who benefited most from acceleration? The silence did not provide answers. It did something subtler. It allowed doubt to surface without being crushed by machinery. Then markets recovered. Permits cleared. Engines restarted. The pause ended as abruptly as it began. Soil once again yielded to steel. But something had shifted. The return felt louder, heavier. Residents noticed the difference. The rhythm now carried memory of stillness. Acceleration no longer felt neutral. It felt chosen. The excavator resumed its work, yet its innocence was gone. People had glimpsed another tempo. And once you sense an alternative pace, speed becomes harder to accept as destiny. Soon, resistance formed. Not violent, not theatrical. Quiet petitions, community meetings, revised plans. The debate was no longer about machinery, but about proportion. How much is enough? How deep is necessary? Growth remained desirable, but unchecked growth lost its aura. The excavator became a symbol in public discourse. Not hated, not worshipped, questioned. And questioning alters power. When a machine is seen clearly, its authority softens. Soon, resistance formed. Not violent, not theatrical. Quiet petitions, community meetings, revised plans. The debate was no longer about machinery, but about proportion. How much is enough? How deep is necessary? Growth remained desirable, but unchecked growth lost its aura. The excavator became a symbol in public discourse. Not hated, not worshipped, questioned. And questioning alters power. When a machine is seen clearly, its authority softens. Even after debate, the machine returns to work. Not because conflict vanished, but because demand persists. Housing shortages, energy needs, expanding trade routes. The arguments are practical, difficult to dismiss. Excavators answer urgency with force. Steel solves what conversation cannot. And yet, every scoop of earth now carries weight. Awareness changes texture. The operator feels watched. The city feels divided. Progress continues, but under scrutiny. The ground opens again, though no one pretends it is neutral anymore. In mining regions, the scale grows immense. Entire mountains reshaped. Valleys reconfigured. The excavator multiplies, becomes fleet, becomes industry. The landscape begins to resemble geometry more than nature. From above, patterns appear, grids, terraces, spirals cut into earth. Efficiency made visible. But geometry lacks memory. It optimizes extraction, not belonging. Workers descend daily into engineered voids, aware that what is removed fuels cities far away. The benefit and the burden rarely share the same horizon. Some argue this is the cost of modern life. Roads, hospitals, data centers, none emerge untouched. The excavator becomes prerequisite, a gatekeeper to comfort. That logic is persuasive. Few wish to abandon what excavation enables. But dependence alters leverage. When a society cannot function without constant digging, restraint becomes radical. The machine no longer serves quietly, it anchors the system. And anchors are difficult to question when everything above depends on them. Then comes the environmental reckoning. Not abstract charts, tangible shifts. Water tables fall. Dust lingers longer in summer air. Species migrate or vanish. The excavator did not intend this. Intention is irrelevant to outcome. Systems respond to pressure regardless of motive. What was once considered external cost becomes lived experience. Farmers adjust crops. Families relocate. Insurance recalculates risk. The mark left behind extends beyond the pit. It enters climate, health, migration. The circle widens. Yet paradox persists. The same machinery carves flood channels that prevent disaster. It clears debris after earthquakes. It builds reservoirs against drought. The excavator can wound and protect. Destruction and defense share the same hydraulics. This duality complicates judgment. Blanket condemnation feels simplistic. Blind celebration feels naive. The machine forces a more demanding stance, discernment. Not whether to dig, but when, where, and why. Technology evolves. Electric excavators reduce noise. Precision software minimizes excess removal. Sensors map underground utilities before steel descends. The future of digging grows more refined, more calculated. Efficiency improves. Waste shrinks. But refinement does not erase the core dilemma. Even the quietest machine still alters terrain. Even the smartest system still decides for the ground. The question returns, not about capability, but about restraint. Ultimately, excavators reveal more about us than about Earth. They expose appetite, ambition, anxiety about standing still. The bucket descends because someone fears delay, because someone seeks advantage, because someone believes transformation equals improvement. The machine leaves trenches, foundations, scars. But beneath all of that, it leaves a mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable. They do not accuse. They reflect. When the project finally ends, what remains is rarely dramatic. A leveled field, a completed tunnel, a stabilized embankment. Life reorganizes quickly around the result. Traffic flows. Lights turn on. Markets adjust. The excavator is transported elsewhere, its tracks fading with the next rain. Yet beneath asphalt and foundations, compacted layers hold memory of pressure. The land does not speak, but it records. Compression lines, disturbed strata, altered drainage paths. These are quiet archives. And archives wait patiently. Years later, few remember the debate, the noise, the hesitation. What remains is infrastructure, normalized, unquestioned. Children grow up thinking the landscape has always looked this way. Memory adapts to permanence. But permanence is an illusion layered over intervention. Somewhere below, the original terrain still exists in fragments. Pressed, redirected, altered. The excavator is long gone, yet its decision echoes invisibly through routine. The deepest traces are not visible from the surface. They shape what feels ordinary. So what do excavators leave behind? Not only holes, not only foundations. They leave altered choices. Once ground has been moved, it rarely returns to its original story. Every excavation narrows some futures and opens others. Steel decides direction. Humans decide intention. The machine obeys, but it never forgets its mark. And perhaps that is the lasting truth. What we dig into the earth, we also dig into ourselves. The landscape changes, and so does the measure of who we are willing to become.